The new season of Wilderness Survival is here, with 12 returning internet celebrities trying to survive 14 days in Montana's frigid Rocky Mountains. They just have to last 14 days in the cold, dry Rocky Mountains of Montana to win the $500,000 prize. Predators are also a concern. What obstacles await them? The first group is positioned in a steep valley. They are Vaz, Jack, and Sarah, a team of 2 men and 1 woman. Vaz is a skilled hunter. He once caught a huge fish. Jack is a leader, the hardest worker in the team, and the most enthusiastic contestant. Sarah is an excellent support player, but her weakness is the cold. This group is quite strong. The second group is located 11 kilometers northeast on a mountain. They'll face rivers and moose. This team includes Rod, Tracy, and Jermaine, another 2-man 1-woman group, but Tracy is a wild card. Fans who have watched her in previous seasons know she can single-handedly drag the whole team down. The third group, 16 kilometers southwest, faces less snow but fierce winds. This team includes Gary, Kai, and Joe. It's a team of 2 women and 1 man. Joe is a previous champion, though he mostly won by default. Kai has completed 3 challenges. Kai has proven to be an excellent hunter. Gary, a female contestant, has thrived in 3 different environments. 2 female champions and 1 male have returned. Joe seems to be the happiest man this season. The fourth group is 11 kilometers east. The Wolfpacks here pose a serious threat. Wes, Sarah, and Jermaine make up this group, which might be the weakest. 2 experienced contestants are teamed with a newcomer. The primary challenge in this survival game is braving the severe cold of the snowy mountains. They are fully exposed to the biting cold. Once the game begins, they follow the map's directions. Heading to their respective destinations for the challenge, Wes felt frozen stiff within seconds of taking off his clothes. Winter has already gripped the Rocky Mountains, and the cold is intensifying. Walking barefoot in the snow is sheer agony. Sarah can't move any further, and the wind here is fierce. Just being exposed to the wind could be deadly. Wes's group spotted a large rock ahead. Jermaine suggested building a shelter there, as the rock forms a natural barrier. Moreover, a nearby water source offered fishing opportunities, so they chose to build their shelter there. A gust of wind swept through. Wes crouched on the ground, frozen in place. Meanwhile, Rod's group carefully treaded on the dry grass. The snow was too icy to handle. Ahead, a barren forest awaited, and they couldn't afford to delay. They pushed straight through. Soon, Wes and his team arrived at their spot and found a partially built shelter. Due to the extreme cold, each team got a shelter framework to finish on their own, along with iron pots, fire starters, and fur for warmth. Most importantly, the show provided fur for warmth. Now, they just needed to perfect their shelter. Sarah's group had a Hogan-style shelter. This wooden structure was very sturdy, built with a lot of timber. Covering it with branches would help block the wind and add warmth, but the shelter alone couldn't keep them warm. Their immediate priority was to start a fire. Only fire could keep them warm. Rod's group also found their shelter. Their first task was to modify the fur, turning it into shoes. Otherwise, walking in the snow. Walking in the snow would be very risky. The cold weather limited blood flow in their feet, causing the capillaries to freeze easily. This could lead to cell damage. Spotting frostbite would be risky. They had to depend on both survival skills, but also on physical fitness. Everyone donned the fur, except for Vaz and Jack, who were working shirtless to improve the shelter. Even though there were plenty of branches, the small leaves wouldn't offer much wind protection or warmth. Sarah stayed inside the shelter. While Jack and Vaz focused on improving the shelter, Sarah was tasked with maintaining the fire. If she failed to get it going, she would be practically useless. Vaz and Jack gave her their fur, but despite using a lot of wood for the shelter, it was still freezing. They had to collect many branches to insulate it. Luckily, Sarah managed to start the fire, and they instantly felt warmer. In this scenario, the men's labor was indispensable. The more men in the team, the better their chances of survival. Vaz and Jack strategized, while Sarah arranged the bedding with branches. The sun sets early in the Rockies, so they had to hurry to finish the shelter. Kai's group quickly wrapped themselves in fur. Although the girls feared the cold, their unique, minimal clothing made them invincible and even sexy, sweating even when wrapped in a cloth. This high-altitude terrain means overexertion can cause oxygen deficiency. Altitude sickness would force them to quit. Gary spotted animal tracks, hinting at a chance for roasted meat. Joe also found bones here, with some meat still on them. Kai thinks this must be leftovers from other animals. This means that there might be carnivores nearby. Large feline predators could appear in their area. This is more frightening than wolf packs. Kai believes they should avoid the western path, fearing lions might be lurking. Wes and his team search for shelter materials. They find many pine cones, but Wes doubts they'll keep out the rain. The leaves are too small and sparse, but it's all they can find. Jermaine has deep insights into building shelters. Sarah is good at making clothes from fur, a skill very suitable for this place. Wes has excellent hunting skills. Wes can supply the team with protein. He gathered many branches, brought them to the shelter, and layered them on the wooden frame. This can provide some wind protection. Keeping warm is very necessary. In the cold, a person's heart rate will speed up. However, if body temperature keeps falling, the heart rate will slow down, risking organ failure. Meanwhile, Rod's team has been massaging their feet since they got there. Why don't they think of using fire to keep warm? Jermaine thinks he has kidney deficiency and can't stand the cold on his feet. He needs to quickly improve the shelter. Tracy, though having some hunting skills, is really a madman. Rod is also quite good at hunting. Jermaine is a former champion. The first day is very limited in time. They must quickly upgrade the shelter to avoid shivering at night. Tracy's fur shoes are very slick. Walking in them is tough. Rod has kidney issues and back pain. Likely won't last long. Mostly pine trees here. Almost every team is using pine branches to build their shelters. Joe's team is progressing very quickly. Their shelter is almost complete. I didn't think the girls would be so skilled. However, the wind is strong and the shelter's spot is too drafty. It needs to be built snugly. Wes and his team are chopping pine branches non-stop, racing to finish the shelter before dark. Otherwise, they risk catching a cold the next day as the temperature will drop even further at night. Wes can already feel it getting colder. While collecting branches, they moved very slowly. Walking barefoot in such extreme cold can easily lead to cuts. This slows down their drying process. In Tracy's group, despite having two men, one suffers from kidney issues and back pain. The other has minor kidney pain, putting this group at a disadvantage. Despite gathering many branches, why didn't they collect dry grass for bedding? Sleeping on the ground drains body heat. Their shelter isn't even finished yet, and they're just sitting inside talking. They even relocated the shelter. A smaller space retains heat better. Aren't they just causing problems for themselves? They should prioritize securing the shelter over modifying it. Their choices directly affect their progress. This decision will surely slow them down. Vaz's group pauses every half hour to keep blood flowing in their feet. Jack suddenly noticed his foot was cut. Maybe it was too cold for him to feel it. This is a hidden danger in extreme cold challenges. A foot injury will surely impact Jack's future challenges. Why didn't they consider making shoes from fur? They lit a fire inside the shelter for warmth, but it melted the ice, making everything damp. As night fell, they felt increasingly cold. At night, they were too cold to sleep, constantly tending the fire and venturing out for wood. At Gary's camp, they took shifts tending the fire, allowing Kai and Joe to rest. This group likely had the best night. Wes's group watched the fire too, and their hot water froze on the ground. Rod's group couldn't sleep because of the cold. They stayed up watching the fire. Why didn't they take shifts like Kai's group? Then everyone could rest. By the second day, Jack's group hadn't slept all night, huddling under the fur. Vaz and Jack sandwiched Sarah in the middle. Even though the sun was out, they didn't want to get up. They spent the whole night curled up. When Sarah got up, she found her eyes were swollen. She suspected the fur caused her allergy. Vaz's group started strong, but Jack's foot injury. And with Sarah struggling in the cold, their workforce dwindled. Rod's group didn't complete their shelter yesterday. Today, they must keep working on it. With Jermaine's injured foot, Rod is handling most of the labor. However, he often stays in the shelter with Tracy to keep warm. Rod goes outside to fetch water and even brings back a pot of blood to cook. He's doing his best for the team. Rod realizes it's about to rain, and their shelter isn't ready yet. This will surely lead to leaks. Despite last night's cold discomfort, Kai's group feels much better this morning. At least they got some sleep. Their shelter is much better now, and as long as they stay warm, surviving here shouldn't be a big problem. The sky suddenly changes, and Kai realizes it's going to rain. They must prepare for it. Gary goes out to fetch water. Kai works on the shelter, and Joe is lying inside. It's like having two secretaries for survival, one for work, one for rest. Wes's group is also working on their shelter. They take this rain very seriously. Everyone in their group is helping out. Without the sun, they're freezing. They need to warm up in the shelter after working outside, or they'll risk frostbite. Wes is determined not to lose a teammate. In this environment, more people mean more strength, but Jermaine is feeling unwell, possibly due to altitude sickness. Wes's group might lose a teammate because of this. Jermaine needs to keep warm, or it could be really dangerous. I'm most envious of Kai's group. The two girls are very proactive. It's noticeably colder today than yesterday. They rely on wood for warmth at night, so Joe is gathering more pine branches to reinforce their shelter. To keep warm, their shelter is the most secure. Dan Joe appears to be low on oxygen. He needs to sit down, drink water, and rest. But with two girls taking care of him, it's worth it. Joe is likely dehydrated. In this cold, dry air, sweat vanishes quickly. If you don't stay hydrated, your heart rate goes up. Increasing body temperature speeds up dehydration. Joe may have overdone it while chopping branches. Tracy's shelter hasn't made any progress. Rod is collecting wood. Without a proper shelter, they can't sleep due to the cold. Contestants trying to coast are clearly struggling here. Tracy and Jermaine are busy in the shelter. He's no help at all, just keeps saying thank you and is totally useless. Rod, out of breath, sits outside the shelter. Having these two as teammates is like the worst luck ever. So, what situations will they encounter next? Don't miss the next video update.